I buried my wife of 45 years in the pouring rain, all alone. Across town, my son and daughter were clinking crystal champagne glasses, celebrating the million-dollar money they thought was coming their way. They believed I was just a grieving, senile old man who would sign any piece of paper they put in front of him. They forgot that I spent 40 years hunting financial criminals for a living. They forgot that I know how to spot a lie in a ledger from a mile away. By the time they realized their mistake, it was too late to say sorry. If you are listening to this, hit the like button and subscribe, because what I am about to tell you is the story of how I had to teach my own children the hardest lesson of their lives. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from. I would love to know who is standing with me. My name is Harrison Caldwell. I am 70 years old, and up until 3 days ago, I thought my life was over. I stood in the middle of Greenwich Cemetery, with mud seeping over the soles of my black dress shoes. The rain in Connecticut during November is not just wet, it is bone-chilling. It finds its way under your collar and settles in your bones. But the cold outside was nothing compared to the freezing emptiness in my chest. Catherine, my Catherine, the woman who taught me how to dance in the kitchen, the woman who put up with my long hours during tax season. She was lying in that mahogany casket, about to be lowered into the dark earth, and I was standing there by myself. I looked at my watch. It was a heavy silver timepiece Catherine gave me for our 30th anniversary. It was 2:30 in the afternoon. The service was supposed to start at 2. The Reverend, a kind man named Miller, who had baptized both of my children, looked at me with pity in his eyes. He shifted his weight, his Bible getting damp even under the umbrella. "We should begin, Harrison," he said softly, trying not to sound impatient. "Just 5 more minutes, Reverend," I begged, my voice cracking. "Traffic on I-95 is terrible this time of day. They called me this morning. They promised." I was lying to a man of God, and I think he knew it, but I had to believe it. Brandon, my son, 38 years old, a man who drove a Porsche and wore Italian suits, had sworn to me over breakfast, "Dad, Steph and I are handling the flowers. We will be there early to help you greet the guests. Don't worry about a thing." Stephanie, my daughter, 35, who lived her entire life through the lens of her smartphone camera, had hugged me and said, "We love you, Daddy. We love Mom. We will be there." So where were they? The few friends who had braved the weather were huddled under a small tent 10 yards away. I could see them whispering. They were wondering why the Caldwell children, the pride and joy of Catherine's life, were missing from her final farewell. Shame burned my cheeks hotter than tears. Then my phone vibrated against my ribs. For a split second, hope surged in my chest. A flat tire, a minor accident, a road closure, anything to explain this absence. I pulled the phone from my inside pocket, shielding the screen from the relentless rain with my trembling hand. It was not a call. It was a notification. Instagram. I stared at the screen. I don't use social media much, mostly just to see what Stephanie is up to since she rarely calls. The notification said I had been tagged in a photo. My thumb hovered over the screen. A sense of dread, heavy and metallic, settled in my stomach. I tapped the notification. The image that loaded on my screen hit me harder than a physical blow. I actually took a step back, nearly slipping in the mud. There they were. It was a selfie. Stephanie was in the foreground holding a glass of golden liquid with bubbles rising to the rim. She was smiling, not a sad, brave smile for a grieving daughter. A wide, toothy, victorious grin. Behind her, leaning over a balcony railing, was Brandon. He was holding a bottle. I squinted through the rain on my glasses. It was Dom Perignon vintage, a bottle that costs $300. They were not in a car. They were not stuck in traffic. I tapped the photo to expand it. My old eyes might be failing, but my mind is still sharp. It is the mind of a forensic auditor. For 40 years, I looked at numbers and documents to find the truth people tried to hide. I looked at this photo and the facts screamed at me. The background, it was a lake. I recognized the shoreline. That was the reservoir near the luxury estates on the north side of town, 15 miles in the opposite direction of the cemetery. The lighting, the shadows were long and cutting across the balcony floor from the west. This photo was taken minutes ago. The caption. I read the words and I felt my heart turn to stone. Goodbye yesterday. Hello. $1 million future. New beginnings. Legacy. They were toasting, while their mother was waiting to be put in the ground. While their father stood alone in the rain, they were drinking champagne. And not just any champagne. They were celebrating the money. The trust fund. Catherine had a family trust. It wasn't a secret. She had inherited it from her grandfather and grew it carefully over decades. It was worth exactly $1 million. She always said it was for the family's future, for grandchildren, for emergencies. My children didn't see it as a safety net. They saw it as a lottery ticket. And now that Catherine was gone, they thought the ticket had finally been cashed. I looked at the location tag Stephanie had foolishly left on the post. The Lakeview Estate. That was the house. The ridiculous $2.5 million mansion they had been nagging us to buy for them for months. They called it the dream home. Catherine hated that house. She called it a glass cage. She told them no a dozen times, but Catherine was gone now, and they thought I was just an obstacle to be pushed aside. I stood there staring at the phone until the screen went dark. The rain ran down my neck, soaking my shirt, but I didn't feel it anymore. The grief that had been drowning me for weeks suddenly evaporated. In its place, something cold and hard began to form. It was the feeling I used to get when I found a problem in a CEO's tax return. It was the feeling of the hunt. Harrison, the Reverend said again, his voice gentle but firm. We really must proceed. I looked at the casket one last time. I remembered Catherine sitting in her armchair knitting, worrying about Brandon's spending habits, worrying about Stephanie's credit card debt. She always defended them. They are just finding their way, Harry, she would say. Be patient. They found their way, Catherine. They found their way to a balcony with champagne while you are lying here. I put the phone back in my pocket. I buttoned my jacket. I stood up straighter. The stoop in my shoulders disappeared. Do it, Reverend, I said. My voice didn't sound like an old man's voice anymore. It sounded like steel. But the children, he hesitated, looking around the empty cemetery. They aren't coming, I said, and I made sure my voice carried over the sound of the rain, so the few witnesses under the tent could hear me clearly. My children are busy. I walked over to the pile of dirt next to the grave. I didn't use the little silver shovel they provide for these ceremonies. I reached down and grabbed a handful of the wet, heavy mud with my bare hand. I wanted to feel it. I wanted to remember this moment. I squeezed the dirt until my knuckles turned white. I thought about the lie Brandon told me this morning. I thought about the smile on Stephanie's face in that photo. I thought about the $1 million they were celebrating. They think the money is theirs. They think I am weak. They think I am just a signature on a check. I tossed the dirt onto the casket. The sound was a dull, final thud. It was the sound of a door closing. Goodbye, my love, I whispered. I promise you I will finish raising them. Seems you and I left the job undone. But I will fix it. I turned away from the grave and walked back to my car. I didn't look back. I took out my handkerchief and wiped the mud from my hands, cleaning every speck of dirt from under my fingernails. I needed to be clean. I needed to be precise. I sat in the driver's seat of my 10-year-old sedan and looked at the dashboard. My phone buzzed again. Another notification. Stephanie had deleted the photo. She probably realized how bad it looked. Or maybe Brandon told her to take it down before I saw it. Too late, "Sweetheart, the auditor has already seen the evidence." I started the engine. I wasn't going to wail. I wasn't going to cry into my pillow. I was going home, and I knew exactly what I would find there. They would be waiting for me, not with hugs, but with demands. I pulled the car out of the cemetery gates. The windshield wipers slashed back and forth like a metronome counting down the time. They wanted $1 million. I was going to give them something else entirely. The drive from the cemetery to the house usually takes 15 minutes, but I drove slowly, letting the line of cars behind me build up without a care. I needed the time to compose my face. I needed to lock away the heartbroken husband and bring out the forensic auditor. I shifted gears, feeling the vibration of the old engine in my hands. This car had carried Catherine to chemotherapy sessions, to grocery runs, to the beach on that one weekend we finally took for ourselves. Now it was carrying me to a crime scene. I turned the corner onto Elm Street and felt a physical jolt in my stomach. The garage door was gaping wide open, exposing the clutter of tools and gardening supplies Catherine had organized just last fall. But that wasn't what made my grip tighten on the steering wheel. It was the car. A silver Porsche 911 was parked haphazardly across the front lawn. It wasn't in the driveway. It was right on the grass, the dormant winter-brown grass that Catherine had spent years tending with her own hands. She used to weed that lawn by hand, refusing to use harsh chemicals because she wanted the robins to be safe. Now, deep, muddy tire tracks gouged through the soil, tearing up the turf like scars. I recognized the car. It wasn't owned, of course. Brandon leased his life. He leased his cars. He leased his condo. He probably leased his personality. He wanted the neighbors to see a Porsche in the driveway, even if he couldn't afford the gas to run it. I pulled my sedan into the driveway, blocking them in. I turned off the ignition and sat there for a moment, listening to the silence of the car, breathing in the scent of old leather and rain. Then I opened the door. The front door of the house was unlocked. In fact, it was wide open. A cold draft was sucking the warmth out of the hallway, carrying with it the damp smell of the storm. But as I stepped across the threshold, another smell hit me. It was the sickly sweet scent of expensive perfume mixed with the sharp bite of scotch. I looked down at the floor. The hardwood, which I had polished just last week in anticipation of the wake that never happened, was streaked with mud. Heavy, careless footprints tracked from the door, weaving through the living room and heading straight toward the back of the house. They hadn't even wiped their feet. I didn't call out. I didn't announce my arrival. I followed the mud. The living room was a wreck. Cushions were thrown on the floor. The drawers of the sideboard where Catherine kept the good silverware and her collection of linen napkins were pulled out, their contents spilling over the edges. It looked like a police raid or a looting, but the noise was coming from down the hall. The sound of metal grinding against metal. A harsh screeching noise that set my teeth on edge. I walked past the master bedroom. The door was ajar. I glanced inside and saw a flash of movement in the mirror. Stephanie was standing there. She was holding up one of Catherine's vintage pearl necklaces, draping it against her black cocktail dress. Beside her, Tiffany, my daughter-in-law, was rummaging through the jewelry box on the vanity, slipping rings onto her fingers, holding her hand up to the light to catch the sparkle. They were shopping. They were picking through the bones before the body was even cold. I kept walking. The grinding noise grew louder. It was coming from my study. I stopped in the doorway. The scene before me would have broken a weaker man, but it only hardened the resolve in my chest. Brandon had his back to me. He had taken off his suit jacket and rolled up his sleeves. He was sweating, his shirt clinging to his back. In his hands was a crowbar, likely taken from my own garage. He was jamming the curved end into the gap of my mahogany filing cabinet, heaving with his entire body weight. Jason, my son-in-law, was standing next to him, holding a flashlight with shaking hands, his eyes darting around the room nervously. Eve, crunch. The wood splintered. This wasn't just a cabinet. This was an antique I had bought when I started my own firm 30 years ago. Brandon grunted with effort. Come on, you piece of junk. Give it up. He pulled again and the lock snapped with a loud crack. The drawer flew open, spilling files onto the floor. Cleared my throat. The sound was soft, but in that room it sounded like a gunshot. Jason jumped, nearly dropping the flashlight. Brandon froze, the crowbar still in his hand. He turned around slowly. He didn't look guilty. He didn't look ashamed. He looked annoyed, as if I were the intruder. Finally, Brandon said, breathing out a breath that smelled of my best single malt scotch, "You are back. Where is the key, Dad? We have been looking everywhere. This thing is ancient." He tossed the crowbar onto my desk. It landed with a heavy thud, scratching the leather surface. I looked at the crowbar. I looked at the splintered wood of the cabinet. I looked at the files scattered on the floor. Tax returns, medical records, old birthday cards. "Hello to you too, Brandon," I said, my voice steady. "We don't have time for pleasantries," he snapped, wiping his forehead with the back of his hand. "We need the trust fund documents. Lawyer Whitman said the trust activates immediately upon burial." "Well, she is buried, isn't she? We need the access codes and the ledger now." I looked at Jason. He refused to meet my eyes, focusing hard on a spot on the carpet. "You missed the funeral," I said. It wasn't a question. Brandon waved his hand dismissively, as if swatting away a fly. "We tried, Dad. Traffic was a nightmare, and honestly, it was too much. The stress, the grief, we couldn't handle seeing her like that." Steps clicked behind me. Stephanie and Tiffany appeared in the doorway. Stephanie was still wearing the pearls. She hadn't even bothered to take them off. "Daddy," Stephanie said, her voice dropping into a tone that was supposed to sound soothing but sounded patronizing. "You look terrible. You are soaking wet." I looked at her. "Where were you, Stephanie?" Tiffany stepped forward, placing a manicured hand on my damp shoulder. Her eyes were wide and shiny with what looked like tears, but I knew better. I know the difference between tears of sorrow and tears of acting. "Oh, Harrison, don't be unreasonable," she said, her voice trembling just the right amount. The children were devastated. We were all huddled together at the house, crying our eyes out. We poured a drink to calm our nerves and we just lost track of time. You have to understand, young people process grief differently. We couldn't bear the finality of the grave. It was out of love, really. We wanted to remember her alive. I looked at her. Then I looked at Brandon, who was checking his watch. I looked at the mud on the floor. Gaslighting. It is a trick liars use to make you question your own reality. She was trying to tell me that their champagne toast on a balcony 15 miles away was grief. She was trying to tell me that breaking into my office with a crowbar was love. They thought I was senile. They thought I would believe it because I was old and lonely and desperate for their affection. I didn't say a word. I walked past Brandon, stepping over the pile of files he had dumped on the floor. I moved toward my desk. There, lying face down on the Persian rug, was a silver frame. It was the photo from our wedding day. Catherine and I laughing, cutting the cake. I bent down. My joints protested, aching from the cold rain, but I didn't wince. I reached out and picked up the frame. The glass wasn't broken, unbelievably. But there, right across Catherine's white dress, was a smear of mud, a tread mark from a heavy, expensive sneaker. Brandon's sneaker. I pulled a tissue from the box on my desk and slowly, carefully wiped the mud from the glass. I cleaned her face. I cleaned my face. I set the photo back on the desk, positioning it exactly where it belonged. The room was silent. They were watching me, waiting for me to break, waiting for me to sign, waiting for me to hand over the keys to the kingdom. I turned to face them. I didn't shout. I didn't scream. I didn't tell them about the Instagram photo. Not yet. You want to open the safe? I asked. Yes, Brandon said, stepping forward eagerly. The papers are in there, right? We need to secure the assets for the family. I looked at the heavy steel safe in the corner of the room. Contained everything. The deeds, the bonds, the access keys to the trust. I reached into my pocket and felt the cold metal of my key ring. Fine, I said. The tension in the room snapped. I saw Jason's shoulders relax. I saw a smirk touch the corner of Stephanie's mouth. They thought they had won. They thought the old man had folded. Tomorrow, I said. Brandon's face fell. What?
No, Dad.
We need it now. It is Friday. The banks close at 5. We have things to arrange. I walked to the door of the office, holding it open. I am tired, I said. I just buried my wife. I am going to take a shower and I am going to rest. If you want to talk business, come back tomorrow morning. But Dad, Stephanie started to whine. Get out, I said. I didn't say it loudly, but the tone stopped her cold. It was the voice I used when I caught a CFO stealing money and gave him one chance to confess before I called the feds. Get out of my office. Get out of my house. Take your rental car off my wife's lawn. Come back at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Or don't come back at all. Brandon glared at me, his jaw working. He looked at the safe, then at the crowbar, then at me. He weighed his options. He realized he couldn't force me. Not without crossing a line he wasn't ready to cross yet. Fine, he spat. Tomorrow, but have the papers ready. We aren't playing games, Dad. He stormed out, bumping my shoulder as he passed. Jason scurried after him like a frightened rat. Stephanie and Tiffany exchanged a look of pure poison before following them, their high heels clicking sharply on the hardwood floor. I watched them go. I watched them pile into the silver Porsche. I watched them back out over the curb, tearing up more grass as they sped away. I closed the front door and locked it. I engaged the deadbolt. Then I slid the chain across. I was alone in the silent house. The smell of their perfume lingered, poisoning the air. I wasn't going to sleep. I wasn't going to rest. I walked back into my office and picked up the phone. I dialed a number I hadn't called in years, but one I knew by heart. It was the private line of Arthur Whitman, our family attorney. I needed to know exactly what kind of trap Catherine had left for them, and then I needed to set a few traps of my own. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the front door, not because I had forgiven them, but because 40 years of auditing had taught me that you can't take down a fraudulent scheme until you see the paperwork. My children were standing on the porch, shivering slightly in the damp night air, clutching leather portfolios like shields. When I waved them inside, they didn't apologize for trying to break in earlier or for the scene in the office. They simply marched into the living room as if they were board members arriving for a hostile takeover. Their earlier aggression was replaced by a slick, desperate professionalism that was almost more insulting. The air in the living room was suffocating. I sat in my armchair, the leather cold against my back, while they arranged themselves on the sofa opposite me. Brandon took the lead, placing a thick, glossy document on the coffee table with a heavy thud. It wasn't just a contract. It was a presentation. I looked at the cover. The words Lakeview Estate were printed in shiny gold letters. Below it was an architectural picture of a sprawling mansion that looked more like a hotel than a home. It had turrets, a 4-car garage, and an infinity pool that spilled over toward a fake-looking lake. It was too much. It was flashy. It was everything Catherine hated. We have a solution, Dad, Brandon said, his voice smooth, practicing the pitch he likely used on his high-end clients. We know things got heated earlier. We apologize. Emotions are high, but we need to be practical. Mom left the trust fund for the family's future, and we have found the perfect investment to secure that legacy. He flipped the document open to a page filled with numbers. I didn't need my reading glasses to see the bottom line. 2.5 million. I looked up at him. You want to buy a house for 2.5 million. You don't have 2.5 million, Brandon. That is where the trust comes in. Stephanie cut in, leaning forward. Her mascara was smudged, giving her a wild look. We have the financing lined up for the mortgage, Daddy. Brandon has a lender ready to go, but we need the down payment, a big one, to get the best interest rate. Tiffany, my daughter-in-law, pointed a manicured finger at a line highlighted in yellow. 1 million, exactly the amount in Catherine's trust. We need you to sign the release, Brandon said, tapping the paper. We need the funds moved to the escrow account by Friday at 5 p.m. That is 48 hours from now. I looked at the timeline. It was incredibly fast for a real estate deal this big. Why the rush? I asked, keeping my face neutral. Houses like this stay on the market for months. It is a competitive market, Brandon lied. His eyes didn't blink. A sure sign of a rehearsed speech. We have a bidding war. If we don't put the earnest money down by Friday, close of business, we lose the deal. And how much is the earnest money? I asked. There was a pause, a beat of silence that told me everything. 100,000. Jason spoke up from the corner of the sofa. It was the first time my son-in-law had spoken since they returned. His voice was thin and strained. We already put it down. We borrowed against some assets to secure the hold. If we don't get the funding by Friday, we lose the deposit. I looked at Jason, really looked at him, while Brandon and Stephanie acted confident. Jason was shaking with fear. He was holding a glass of water, and the surface of the water was rippling because his hand was shaking so hard. Sweat beaded on his upper lip even though the house was cool. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the clock on the mantel, watching the second hand move around. 100,000 non-refundable deposit on a 48-hour timeline. No honest bank works like that. That wasn't a normal real estate contract term. That was a shark's term. That was hard money. They had borrowed 100,000 from someone dangerous to lock in this deal, betting everything on the idea that I would hand over Catherine's million to cover them. Why this house? I asked quietly. Why now? Your mother hasn't been in the ground for 6 hours. Stephanie let out a sob that sounded practiced. That is exactly why, Daddy. Mom always wanted us to be close. She hated that we lived in different parts of the city. She always talked about a family compound, a place where the grandchildren could run around and we could all be together under one roof. This house has a guest wing. It has space for everyone. It is her dream, Daddy. We are doing this for her. It is her dying wish. I felt sickness rise in my throat. I remembered Catherine sitting at this very coffee table cutting coupons from the Sunday paper. Even though we had plenty of money in the bank, I remembered her refusing to buy a new winter coat because the old one still had good buttons. Catherine hated debt. She hated showing off. The idea of her children living in a huge mortgaged monster, drowning in payments they couldn't afford, would have broken her heart. She never said that. I said she did. Tiffany insisted, putting her hand over her heart. She told me last Christmas. She said, I wish I could buy a castle for my babies. They were rewriting history. They were using the silence of the dead to prove their greed. It was the lowest kind of manipulation I had ever seen, and I had interviewed corporate fraudsters who stole from orphans. I looked back at the contract. My eyes scanned the tiny print at the bottom of the page. The seller was listed as a limited liability company, an LLC with a vague name, Obsidian Holdings. I memorized it instantly. I looked at Jason again. He was tapping his foot on the floor, a fast rhythm.
Top, top, top.
He looked like a man waiting for a bomb to go off. If this was just about buying a dream home, he would be excited. He would be showing me pictures of the pool or the kitchen. But he wasn't. He was terrified. This wasn't an investment. This was a rescue mission. They were in trouble. Big trouble. And they saw Catherine's life savings as their bailout money. I knew that if I said no right now, if I kicked them out again, the situation would explode. Desperate people do dangerous things. If Jason owed money to the wrong people and I shut the door on him tonight, they might come back with more than just a crowbar. I needed time. I needed to see the full picture. I needed to trace the LLC. I needed to talk to Whitman. I let out a long, heavy sigh. I slumped my shoulders, letting the tiredness I truly felt show in my posture. I took off my glasses and rubbed the bridge of my nose, copying the gesture of a defeated old man. "It is a lot of money," I mumbled, my voice shaky. "It is an investment," Brandon urged, sensing weakness. "Property values in that area are skyrocketing. The trust will double in value in 5 years. Mom would want us to be secure." I put my glasses back on and looked at them. I made sure my eyes looked watery and tired, not sharp and calculating. "I don't understand all these numbers," I said, pushing the contract away slightly. "It has been a long day. My head is spinning. I can't sign anything tonight. My hand is shaking too much." Brandon's face tightened. "Dad, we told you the deadline." I know. Friday," I interrupted, raising a weak hand. "That gives us tomorrow. I need to sleep. I need to pray on it. And I need to have Arthur Whitman look at the transfer papers. I can't just write a check. The trust has rules." Stephanie looked at Brandon. Panic flashed in her eyes. "Can't we just skip the lawyer? Can't you just use your power as the executor?" I shook my head slowly. "No, sweetheart. Arthur has the seals. He has the final authorization codes. If I try to move that much money without him, the bank will freeze the account for fraud. You don't want that, do you?" Jason flinched at the word freeze. "Fine," Brandon said, breathing out sharply. "Fine, we will go to Whitman's office first thing in the morning. 9 a.m. sharp. You meet us there." I nodded. "Yes, 9 a.m. I will be there." Brandon stood up, buttoning his jacket. He looked relieved, smug. He thought he had played me. He thought the delay was just an old man's fear, not a smart retreat. "You are making the right choice, Dad," he said, patting my shoulder in a way that made my skin crawl. "Mom would be proud of you." They gathered their papers. Stephanie lingered for a second, looking at the pearl necklace she was still wearing, then at me, daring me to ask for it back. I didn't. I let her keep it. It was proof now. "We will see you tomorrow, Harrison," Tiffany said, offering a fake tight smile. "Get some rest. You look awful." They filed out of the house, the energy in the room shifting from confrontation to early celebration. I heard them in the driveway. "We got him," I heard Brandon whisper loudly. "He is folding." "Close one," Jason muttered. I waited until the tail lights of the Porsche disappeared down the street. I waited until the silence of the empty house returned, heavy and sad. Then I stood up. I walked to the kitchen and poured the glass of water Jason had left untouched into the sink. I washed the glass. I dried it. They thought they had until Friday. They thought they were 48 hours away from $1 million. They were wrong. They were 12 hours away from the most thorough audit of their lives. I went back to my office, stepped over the broken wood of the cabinet, and sat down at my computer. I pulled a small encrypted USB drive from my safe, the real safe, the one hidden behind the baseboard that they hadn't found. It was time to go to work. I had an LLC to investigate, and I had a feeling that Obsidian Holdings was going to lead me straight to the truth they were trying to bury. I turned off the bedside lamp, plunging the master bedroom into a heavy, suffocating darkness. To anyone watching from the street, the Caldwell house was asleep, a normal home, finally resting after a day of sorrow. But I was not asleep. I was sitting on the edge of the mattress, my feet pressing against the cold hardwood floor, listening. My heart was beating a slow, steady rhythm, the kind of controlled pulse I used to keep during high-stakes audits when I knew a suspect was lying right to my face. I waited for 10 minutes, then 20. The silence of the house was broken only by the settling of the foundation and the distant hum of the refrigerator. Then I heard it, the clink of glass against glass, a soft, wet sound of liquid being poured. It was coming from the living room. They hadn't left, or at least the boys hadn't. I stood up. I didn't put on my slippers. I needed to be silent and slippers shuffle. I walked barefoot, moving through the room by memory. I knew every creaky floorboard in this hallway. Catherine used to joke that I could float through the house like a ghost when I wanted a midnight snack without waking her. Now I needed to be a ghost for a different reason. I cracked the bedroom door open just an inch. A sliver of amber light sliced across the floor. They had turned on the reading lamp by the armchair, the one Catherine used for her knitting. I moved into the hallway, staying close to the wall where the floor beams were strongest and least likely to groan under my weight. I stopped just before the archway leading to the living room. I couldn't see them, but I could smell them. The rich, smoky aroma of my 18-year-old single malt scotch drifted toward me. That bottle was a retirement gift. I had been saving it for a special occasion. Apparently, my wife's funeral was the occasion they chose. Jason's voice cut through the air, high-pitched and shaking with panic. You saw his face, Brandon. He is hesitating. If he doesn't sign by Friday, I am dead. Literally dead. There was the sound of ice swirling in a glass. Brandon let out a low, dismissive chuckle. Relax, Jay. You are being dramatic. He isn't hesitating. He is just old. His brain is running on half power. Did you see how he looked at the contract? He was squinting like he was trying to read hieroglyphics. He is confused. He is tired. He will sign because it is the easiest path. I am not being dramatic, Jason hissed, his voice dropping to a terrified whisper that carried more weight than a scream. These aren't bank collectors, Brandon. These are the guys who operate out of the back of the pool hall on 4th Street. I owe them 80 grand plus interest. They told me if I don't have the cash by 5 p.m. Friday, they aren't going to take my car, they are going to take my hand, my right hand. I held my breath, pressing my back against the wallpaper. Loan sharks. My son-in-law, the man raising my grandchildren, was gambling with violent criminals. That explained the shaking hands. That explained the desperate deadline. He wasn't buying a house. He was buying his life. Drink your scotch, Brandon said, his voice smooth and cold. It is good stuff. The old man has good taste. I will give him that. Look, even if he reads the contract, he won't understand the shell company. I buried the ownership structure 3 layers deep. As far as he knows, Obsidian Holdings is just a developer. He doesn't know it is me. My blood ran cold. Brandon wasn't just helping Jason. He was the seller. He was selling a property he likely owned or controlled to the family trust at an inflated price. They were working together to wash the money right under my nose. But what if he talks to Whitman? Jason asked, the glass clinking against his teeth as he took a nervous sip. Whitman isn't senile. Whitman is a paper pusher, Brandon scoffed. And as for Dad, don't worry about his mental state. I made sure he wouldn't be asking too many sharp questions this week. What do you mean? Jason asked. Brandon laughed again. A cruel, ugly sound. You know, his blood pressure medicine, the little white pills he takes every morning like clockwork. Yeah. Well, let's just say he is getting a very healthy dose of vitamin D instead. I swapped them out on Tuesday when I came over to help Mom with the garage. He has been taking sugar pills and vitamins for 3 days. His pressure is probably through the roof. It makes him foggy, tired, dizzy. He can't focus on details. By tomorrow morning, he will be so out of it, He will sign the Declaration of Independence if I put it in front of him, just to go back to bed. The hallway seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I had to reach out and grip the door frame to keep from falling. They weren't just thieves. They weren't just liars. They were killing me. High blood pressure runs in my family. It is what killed my father. It is what put me in the hospital 5 years ago. Without that medicine, a spike in stress could trigger a stroke or a heart attack at any moment. Brandon knew that. He knew my medical history better than anyone. He was using my own body against me to steal $1 million. He wasn't just counting on me being old. He was making me weaker on purpose. I listened for another moment, but I had heard enough. I heard the clink of the bottle against the glass again. They were refilling. They were celebrating their cleverness while sipping the liquor of the man they were actively poisoning. I backed away slowly, step by careful step, until I was safely inside the master bedroom. I closed the door silently, the latch clicking into place like the hammer of a gun. My hands were shaking, but this time it wasn't from grief or age. It was from a rage so pure, so hot, it felt like it was burning the lining of my stomach. I walked to the nightstand. My prescription bottles were lined up in a neat row, just as Catherine had arranged them. I picked up the bottle labeled lisinopril. I opened the cap and poured the contents into my palm. I stared at them in the dim moonlight filtering through the window. They were small, round, and white. They looked exactly like my medicine. But I looked closer. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and shone it on the pills in my hand. My real medicine had a tiny imprint on one side, a code number. These pills were smooth. They were slightly chalky vitamins. Cheap, generic vitamins. I felt a wave of dizziness that had nothing to do with blood pressure. My own son, the boy I taught to ride a bike, the boy I sat with through night terrors. He had stood in my bathroom, emptied my life-saving medicine, and replaced it with fakes, knowing it could kill me. He didn't care if I died. In fact, if I died after signing the papers, it would just make things easier for him. No more old man to deal with. No more questions, just the money. I walked into the en-suite bathroom. I didn't turn on the light. I moved by the pale glow of the street lamp outside. I stood over the toilet and opened my hand. The pills fell into the water with tiny, meaningless splashes. I flushed. I watched the water swirl, taking the proof of his betrayal down the drain. I opened the medicine cabinet. Behind a box of old bandages hidden in the back, where I kept travel supplies, was an emergency stash of my real medicine. I kept it there in case I ever ran out on a weekend. Brandon didn't know about the stash. He wasn't thorough. He was arrogant. I took a real pill and swallowed it dry. Tasted bitter like justice. Then I leaned over the sink and looked at myself in the mirror. The face staring back at me was old. The skin was wrinkled. The eyes were tired. The hair was thinning. It was the face of a grieving widower. It was the face of a victim. But as I watched, something changed in the eyes. The watery sadness disappeared. The confusion vanished. The pupils tightened, sharp and focused. They wanted a senile old man. They wanted a foggy, confused father who would sign away his legacy to save them from their own sins. I gripped the edge of the porcelain sink until my knuckles turned white. "I am not that man," I whispered to the reflection. "I am Harrison Caldwell." I brought down the Enron subsidiaries. I traced assets through 3 continents to catch a Ponzi schemer. I have stared down cartel accountants and corrupt senators, and I am going to destroy you. I splashed cold water on my face and dried it with a rough towel. I walked back into the bedroom and sat in the leather chair by the window, watching the rain streak against the glass. Let them drink my scotch. Let them think they have won. Let them believe the old man is fading away. Tomorrow I wouldn't just be going to the lawyer. I would be going to war. And unlike them, I wouldn't be fighting with borrowed money or fake pills. I would be fighting with the truth. And the truth, as they were about to find out, is the deadliest weapon of all. I arrived at the law offices of Whitman Stone and Associates at 7:45 in the morning. The building was a brick fortress downtown, the kind of place that charged $500 just to open the front door. The receptionist hadn't even arrived yet, but I knew Arthur Whitman would be there. Arthur was like me. He believed that the world belonged to those who showed up before the coffee was brewed. I found the side door unlocked, just as it had been for 30 years of our friendship. I walked down the plush carpeted hallway, the silence of the firm offering a sharp contrast to the chaos inside my own head. Arthur was in his corner office staring out the window at the gray morning sky. He turned when I entered, his face lined with the same grief I felt, but layered with a special kind of anxiety. "Harrison," he said, removing his reading glasses. "You are early. The appointment with the children isn't until 9. I didn't sit down. I walked straight to his desk, placing my hands flat on the polished wood. I needed to take control immediately. "I know about the pills, Arthur." He blinked, confused. "What pills?" "My son swapped my blood pressure medicine for vitamins," I said, my voice low and steady. "He is trying to cause a medical emergency to force me to sign the release. They are desperate, Arthur. They owe money to people who break legs for a living." Arthur's face went pale. He sank into his leather chair, looking suddenly very old. "Dear God, I knew they were entitled, Harrison, but I never thought I cut him off. We don't have time for shock. I need to see the trust documents, not the summary you sent over last week. I need the master file, the original papers Catherine signed 6 months ago." Arthur hesitated. He looked at the locked drawer on his right, then back at me. There was a flicker of something in his eyes. Not reluctance, protection. "There is something you don't know," he said softly. "Something Catherine asked me not to tell you unless it was absolutely necessary." "It is necessary," I said. "Show me." Arthur unlocked the drawer. He pulled out a heavy, bound document with a blue cover. He didn't hand it to me right away. He held it, his fingers tracing the gold lettering on the front. "6 months ago, Catherine came here alone," he began. "She didn't drive herself. She took a taxi because she didn't want you to know. She brought a stack of papers with her. Bank statements, credit card bills she had intercepted from Brandon's mailbox." I felt a chill run down my spine. Catherine never snooped. She trusted blindly, or so I thought. She knew, Arthur continued. She knew Brandon was running a Ponzi scheme. She saw the transfers from his client accounts into his personal offshore holdings. She didn't understand the technical details, Harrison, but she knew math. She knew the numbers didn't add up. She knew he was stealing to fund that lifestyle of his. I stared at the blue folder. My wife, the woman who knit sweaters and baked cookies, had done her own investigation. She had protected me from the truth because she knew it would break my heart. "And Stephanie," I asked. "She knew about the debt." Arthur nodded. She knew Stephanie had maxed out 7 credit cards and taken out a second mortgage on her condo to pay for that influencer lifestyle. Catherine was terrified, Harrison. Not for herself, for you. She was terrified that, when she died, they would bleed you dry. She said you were too soft with them, that you would give them anything they asked for out of grief. I closed my eyes. She was right. Until yesterday, she was absolutely right. So she changed the terms, Arthur said, sliding the folder across the desk. "Open it to page 42, subsection C." I opened the document. The paper was thick, creamy, expensive. I turned the pages until I found it. The clause was bolded. The Supreme Guardian Clause. I read the legal language with my auditor's brain, translating it instantly into plain English. It was brilliant estate planning. It said that while the children were the named beneficiaries, the surviving spouse, me, was appointed the supreme guardian of the assets. It gave me absolute veto power. It meant the money didn't transfer automatically. It meant I had to officially confirm that the beneficiaries were morally and financially fit. If I decided they were not, if I found proof of financial recklessness or criminal activity, I had the legal right to cancel their claim completely. But it went further. The clause gave me the power to redirect the entire amount, the full $1 million, to a chosen charitable trust. I looked up at Arthur. Does Brandon know about this? No, Arthur said. Catherine insisted we keep this sealed. She wanted to give them a chance. She hoped they would step up, but she prepared for the worst. She left you the gun, Harrison. She just hoped you would never have to pull the trigger. I ran my finger over Catherine's signature at the bottom of the page. It was shaky. The cancer was already affecting her hands, but it was determined. Even on her deathbed, she was fighting for us. She was protecting our legacy from the very children she gave birth to. I looked at the clock on the wall. 8:15. They would be here in 45 minutes. I need you to do something for me, Arthur, I said, closing the folder. Anything. I need you to draft 2 sets of papers for the meeting. 2? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Yes, the first set will be the standard release forms, the ones Brandon thinks he is signing, the ones that move the $1 million directly to the escrow account for that ridiculous house. Make them look official. Use the gold seals. Make them look like victory. And the second set, Arthur asked slowly. The second set uses the Supreme Guardian Clause, I said. It declares Brandon and Stephanie unfit beneficiaries due to financial wrongdoing and criminal intent. It triggers the immediate transfer of all funds to the Catherine Caldwell Legal Aid Fund for elderly abuse victims. Arthur stared at me, his mouth slightly open. Harrison, if you do that, if you drop that on them, they will be blindsided. Finished. Yes, that is the point. But the fallout, Arthur warned. They will sue. They will scream. It will be a war. It is already a war, Arthur, I said, my voice hardening. They fired the first shot when they tried to kill me with vitamin pills. I am just ending it. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street where the city was waking up. I saw a silver Porsche turning the corner, fast and aggressive. They were early. Of course they were early. Greed doesn't sleep in. Prepare the room, Arthur, I said, turning back to him. Put the fake papers on the table. Let them think they have won. I want to see their faces. I want to see the moment they think they are rich. Arthur nodded, reaching for his intercom to call his paralegal. He looked at me with a mix of fear and admiration. You are going to destroy them, Harrison, he whispered. I shook my head. No, Arthur. I am going to save them. They are drowning in a sea of their own making, and they think money is a life raft. It isn't. It's an anchor. I am going to cut the rope. It might hurt, but it is the only way they will learn to swim. I sat down in the client chair facing the door. I crossed my legs. I set my face into the mask of the tired, grieving, confused old man they expected to see. Let them come, I thought. The Supreme Guardian is ready. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button to support the channel. Have you ever had to set a hard boundary with family to protect your own peace? I want to hear your story in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories of truth and justice. Until next time.